Blood Ravens are a particularly well-known Space Marine chapter, and are most well-known for being the protagonists of the Dawn of War series of games, and don't really have a lot of lore about them outside of the games and the books, which are absolutely atrocious. And C.S. Gatto is easily the worst Black Library writer I've ever seen. But this video is not a rant about C.S. Gatto, this video is about the Blood Ravens. Let's talk about the Blood Ravens. The chapter itself is one that prides itself on knowledge and being thoughtful in their strategy, as they are quite codex compliant with one major exception, that being their particular emphasis on librarians within their ranks. They're highly adaptable and do well in any situation since they take into account the strengths and weaknesses of any potential strategy and enemy they're facing. And they also really like relics, seeing them as a link to their history and lineage, which is, at this point, unknown to them. However, their obsession with relics does not just apply to their own, as they seem to have somehow accumulated an incredibly diverse array of relics from other Space Marine chapters. How did they get them? I have no idea, and there isn't really an explanation for it as far as I know, so I guess we can just chalk it up to kleptomania and leave it at that. The only thing that I could figure as a reason why is that they could potentially glean some of their chapter's history from other chapter relics, but that wouldn't make sense since Space Marine chapters rely on their history from their relics. But that doesn't seem to work either, because why would they have Forgebreaker, you know, the Thunder Hammer, made by Fulgrim for Ferrus Manus, Primarch of the Iron Hands? They have that. There's a list on Lexiconum that says what they have. And the last time before we saw them have it, Perturabo had it. Which means at some point, the Blood Ravens just wandered into the Eye of Terror, stole it from underneath his bed, and then just walked off with it. But it gets weirder because, as far as we know now, Perturabo has it again. So, I don't know. Severe bouts of kleptomania aside, their history in regards to what founding they came from is unknown, and the earliest date we have where they could have appeared is M35. The first major appearance occurred during the Tartarus campaign, where the Third Company, commanded by future Chapter Master Gabriel Angelos, repelled an Orc-Wa and a Chaos incursion by the Alpha Legion that turned one of the Blood Ravens' librarians traitor. Remember this. This will be important later. Oh, and also a Demon Prince got created because the Eldar, in their infinite wisdom, didn't tell the Blood Ravens that the Alpha Legion were performing a ritual on the planet, because, of course, they didn't.
Stop speaking in riddles.
And since Sindri, the Chaos Sorcerer from that Alpha Legion warband, needed blood sacrifices, in the entire game, you were just killing lots of orcs and elves and Chaos Space Marines. You just provided the perfect recipe for the ritual to be finalized. The moral of the story is if it's not your fault, it's probably the Eldar. After this, some more brief conflicts happen. The world of Cronus is besieged by Necrons and the Word Bearers, and Karava is an absolute disaster, resulting in the Blood Ravens losing not only their force commander, but 5 companies of Space Marines. This results in the chapter going back to the recruiting sector to regroup, which doesn't last long as High Fleet Kraken decides to show up and treat Subsector Aurelia like your grandma does the taco bar at the Golden Corral. The Splinter Fleet does get repelled. Not long after this, their original home planet of Aurelia, that got lost in a warp storm about 2,000 years before the game's events, just appears out of the warp, out of nowhere. The planet is covered in Black Legion and Traitor Guardsmen, and this is where things take a turn, because it turns out that the Blood Ravens chapter master has been corrupted by Chaos and was working with the Black Legion. How did this happen? Well, when Aurelia was swallowed whole, the ship, the Judgement of Carrion, was as well. Kyrus was on the ship, with a trapped, great unclean one named Ulker, and he got corrupted due to the fact that being next to a greater demon for an extended period of time, especially as a Psyker, is bad news. Oh, and that Demon Prince from the end of Dawn of War 1, yeah, he helped corrupt Kyrus too. About 500 years after the initial disappearance of Kyrus, the Blood Ravens' 5th Company were investigating the ship as it now becomes Space Hulk. They found Kyrus just sitting there on the Space Hulk. Despite their best efforts, the entire company got trapped on the ship. Kyrus began spreading the taint of chaos to his brothers, and made a deal with Ulker, allowing the 5th Company Apothecary to get possessed. So, in exchange, they let the ship go from the warp, and then Kyrus and the possessed Apothecary just waltzed right back into the chapter like nothing happened. He would eventually ascend to the rank of Chapter Master, with his Apothecary becoming part of his honor guard. So not only is the Chapter Master traitor, but the Apothecary and many portions of the First Company are also traitors. That's a good look. After the Blood Ravens realized this, Gabriel Angelos and your force commander marshaled any loyalist forces in a long conflict against Kyrus. basically resulting in a Bloodraven civil war. Kyrus would eventually get raffle-stomped by Angelos and Inquisition-led forces, and the remaining traitors ended up being purged from the chapter's ranks, with Angelos promoted to chapter master. The last real appearance we see of them is on the planet of Acheron, where the Bloodravens, orcs led by Gorguts, and the Bealtan Eldar craft world are all fighting over the Spear of Cain, which turned out to be a trick, because grabbing it resulted in a demon being released, forcing the three to ally together to banish it. And past this point, it seems like they are now part of the Indomitus Crusade, with them receiving Primaris reinforcements. The common thread with them is the Psyker thing. They have a lot of Psykers, with many serving double roles within the chapter as Librarian and Captain, or Chapter Master. But this has led to many a theory as to their gene lineage. The most common theory that they are the Thousand Sons. And to me, this does not hold a lot of water. Not to say that it wouldn't be cool if it turned out to be the Thousand Sons, it just doesn't hold up to scrutiny, at least to me. And there are a couple reasons why I think this. The Bloodravens do not have a history of mutation. The Thousand Sons gene seed has this thing called the Flesh Change, which is so bad that it forced Ahriman to turn all of the non-Psyker Space Marines within the Thousand Sons into little more than dust inside of power-armored suits, which he has now been spending the last 10,000 years trying to undo. So, considering the fact that Gabriel Angelos hasn't turned into a Chaos Spawn, I can imagine we can rule that out. Gene Seed itself also does not transfer psychic traits, so the high concentration of Psykers might just be because they happen to recruit from planets that have a high number of psychically capable people. And also, all surviving Loyalist Thousand Sons became part of the Grey Knights, and since they are not part of the Second Founding, that is not going to work either. If I had to guess where they came from, I would wager either Imperial Fists or Ultramarines, which I know is a bit boring, but these two Gene Seed don't have a lot of mutation and are considerably more stable than that of the Thousand Sons. And while the Dark Angels Gene Seed is considerably more stable than the two, we haven't even seen high nor low of the Dark Angels at all, even in passing reference, so I don't think that's going to work either. So for my example, we're just going to stick with Imperial Fists and Ultramarines, and honestly, I'm leaning more on the Ultramarine end of the spectrum since most chapters are derived from that gene seed, but at the end of the day, their origin doesn't matter. They're still cool regardless of what Primarch they come from, and I would really like them to show up again at some point, whether it's in a book or in a game. I mean, Space Marine 2 comes out next year. I'm hoping for at least a passing reference or something, because I love the Bloodravens. They're incredibly unique, and they function a bit differently compared to other Space Marine chapters. They really feel like a jack-of-all-trades, master of none in ways that even the Ultramarines don't feel. Which is funny, because that's their entire gimmick, aside from the Roman thing. So if you want to learn more about the Bloodravens, go play the Dawn of War games. They're fantastic, except for 3. 3 is, a bit fugly, but 1 and 2 and their expansions, absolutely fantastic. Thank you all very much for watching. Have a great night.